That's gonna be going. You're probably gonna hear the fan, I'm sorry. But I moved it in here, that way this wall isn't so boring. It's also pretty quiet though, to be honest. Yeah, I'm printing my wife a vase, okay? Or vase. 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 We've been using, and I know a lot of you are not gonna care about this content, I'm okay with that, but I like to share what I'm working on. I've been using some pretty cheap, janky, Amazon type stuff when it comes to soldering. But you know what? I am trying to get more serious about this. I'm trying to learn. I have watched an incredible amount of videos lately about soldering. That's some boring shit, but it's nice to learn, right? Learn. Anyway, I have significantly upgraded what we have. It's still not like lab grade or whatever you want to call it. But look, when our new soldering station here is like 800 bucks or 700 bucks, whatever it was, and that was 134, that's a pretty big jump. But more importantly, this is a 5-in-1. It's got a desoldering gun, it's got a suction pen, it's got a proper rework station, it's obviously got a soldering iron, it's got soldering tweezers, which will be really nice when you're trying to take SMDs off. The desoldering gun is the #1 thing when I talked about trying to replace a connector myself and being afraid. I even have a sacrificial board right here. This is a 4070 that is dead, or TI. I have completely mangled the board trying to get it off with too much heat. But that's just because of bad technique and improper tools. Yes, I know people like Northwest Repair and Northridge Fix, they make it look so easy. But it's the same thing people tell me when it's like, Jay, you make bending tubing look so easy. Everyone bubbles their tubing or it gets all deformed and stuff. It's because it's about technique. And to learn the right technique, I need the right tools. And the reason why I'm saying that is although I have seen videos of guys just using low temp solder, which I have. I actually had some low temp solder, but it was more like the syringe type. This is the actual wire. So that'll make it a little bit easier. For the record, I did get all of these pins loose. I got the high temp solder completely mixed with the low temp solder, and I have it to where when I heat it up, every pin wiggles, but I cannot get it all evenly heated to where they're all soft enough for me to pull it out, mostly because of the main standoffs are just so thick. So I'm hoping the desoldering gun will help with that. But that's what this is. This is a sacrificial practice board. With the low temp solder, I've got some of that. But anyway, we'll look at this later. But this right here is more importantly, this is and it's just so funny because I hear a lot of professional solderers, is that a term? I don't know. Professional electrician repair people saying preheat boards are dumb. If you know what you're doing and you know how to heat the board properly with a heat gun, you don't need a preheat board. But the problem for me is because I'm still slow, sometimes I need that heat retained in the board because I need time to work on it. And yeah, and I know keeping heat in the board for too long can cause damage. So I'm just trying to figure this all out. But right now we're gonna sort of unbox this together. I'm gonna get it all set up and I'm gonna take another stab at getting this connector out. Do you wanna know how much heat I used on this trying to get it out? Look, my tweezers crushed the connector because of how hot it got. That connector is pretty high temp. So what I'm learning is more heat is not the right answer, but I now know where some of the thresholds are. But I think having the proper desoldering gun is gonna help for through solders like that. A professional can heat it up and push it through because they know what they're doing. They know the feel, they know the right board temp. I also am excited. I got a anti-glare light. That's gonna be huge. The amount of glare that I get on the board, especially when we're dealing with like solder flux and all that on there and it gets shiny and you can lose the part underneath the solder because of the reflection. I'm excited for that. Anyway, this is I'm not gonna pull it out, but this is the heater I've been using, which is really just a double hot plate. It's not the right thing. It doesn't get the board up off the surface. A proper preheater clamps the board above the heater element so the heat radiates through the board. Not having physical things touching the hot plate. It's advertised as a hot preheater, but it's just not right. Okay, and a lot of you were like, Jay, what the hell is that thing? Like, that would just be for like if I wanted to make some tea. Honestly, boil a pot on there, because you literally could. But I'm kind of excited for this. I think a lot of the professionals though are like, that's stupid, don't bother. But I think, you know, something else I've been watching, I want to build a whiskey room in my house. I'm taking a bonus room, I'm turning it into a whiskey room. I'm learning how to do hardwood flooring, and I'm gonna be doing drywall cutting and all that. So I've been watching a lot of cabinet building because I want to build a wall, like a built-in myself. the comments on these types of videos are the worst. Doesn't matter if it's drywall or stucco or flooring or framing or electrical or soldering, the comment section are so much more toxic than even ours. Do you know why? Because the way a tradesman feels good about himself is making other tradesmen look like shit. You know what? Just let your talent speak for itself. You don't have to put everyone down around you. And if you're a tradesman that's ever gone into a video and been like, that method is crap, I'm sorry, your attitude's crap. So here is the heater element right there. As you can see, we've got these rails that move along. Now you can see the board is clamped down and nothing's physically touching the hot part, which is not how it is over there. Okay, so there's that simple power cable. We have on off right here. We have the heater element. I did watch a video on this thing. It's not the best preheater. It's like 300 bucks. It's definitely not the most expensive, that's for sure. But it takes a while, I guess. And for instance, for them to heat the board to 100C, they had to run the heater element at like 220C because you're losing a lot of that heat going around it and such, where it's just radiant heat. So you definitely have to push the heat quite a bit to get the part warm, but that's okay. I'd still rather do that and wait the time to preheat and then use the board heater to help, or the hot air rework gun to help. But I'm gonna be trying in this video to get that connector out today. Probably not gonna take you along for the whole ride because I really don't want to hear how bad my technique is. I just wanna see whether or not I can or can't do it. Okay, here is our polarized anti-glare lamp. This is probably gonna be the best, like the single best upgrade I can do to my camera and microscope right now. That is a shit microscope and camera, I'm gonna be honest. But I didn't wanna spend another like 500 bucks on one right now until I at least, cause it's good enough to allow me to see bigger and to start to get the technique down. But I really want to start being able to do our own board repair around here. So it does have the polarized element that goes in here. You can take it out entirely too if you want. And then this will rotate to rotate the element so that we can find the right angle where the glare is gone. It's no different than how, like, if you have polarized lenses in your glasses, and you'll notice, like, if you take your phone screen and you like rotate it at a certain angle, like it starts to have like that rainbowy color look to it. That's because of the coating that's on the screen or the actual glass itself. Or how like you can see through glass in certain ways and not in certain ways because it's either removing reflection or like looking through the glass through the polarized element. This is gonna allow me to do the same thing, just now the flux reflection won't be such a problem. So low temp solder, I understand the technique, I used it. That's how I got the solder soft on there. The idea with low temp solder is it melts at a lower temp. It melts at 183°C. That's pretty low. That's only 381 degrees Fahrenheit. To put it into perspective, to get this stuff to melt initially, I was like 850 degrees Fahrenheit on the iron. That's why the board and the hot air gun melted. Hot air gun melted the board and obviously the connector. So I completely fucked this one up. But that's okay, because I'd rather learn on this than my 5090. That's why I didn't do it that way. But anyway, you mix low temp solder with high temp solder. And then what it effectively does is lowers the melting point of the high temp solder. The stuff that they make in the factories like this, the solder melting point is extremely high. In fact, it's way higher than like even my consumer grade stuff can go. So you use a low temp solder to make sure that you bring the solder temp down. That way you can get the joints loose and then work on the part. The downside is, when you resolder something like that with consumer grade stuff, it's never going to be as strong or as high temp as the factory. But what's better? Have a lower temp joint that is still fine in our use case with a product that can work again, or having it be dead because we like didn't use the high temp solder. All right, this though, to be honest, is what I'm most excited about. Having the right tools. Now wow. Okay, proper professionals can make do. For instance, you can take a fast race car driver and put him in a slow car, and he will drive that slow car faster than an average driver can. And you can take a average driver and put them in a race car, and they probably won't be able to even get around the track, right? But that's the thing is, how do you gain those skills? Well, you learn to do it the right way, and then you can adjust because of talent. So that's what I'm trying to do, is I'm trying to learn the right way here. This is the desoldering gun. This is what's going to allow me to be able to properly desolder those joints, hopefully. So you can see right here, it's got a little vacuum tube. So apparently, I need to read the instructions. It looks like it has solder that potentially gets loaded into here too, I think, but it's, yeah, okay. I got a lot to learn. But this is gonna allow me to get the joint nice and hot, has different size tips. That way it fits perfectly around the joint. You don't want it to be too big. If it's touching the board around the joint, it's doing no good. If it's only touching the center and not heating the outsides of the joint, it's no good. So it has different sizes that you use to make sure it's just right. So essentially what we would do is we would take it, get it right over the hole. This is way too big of a tip. Heat it up and then push the button and it'll pull the solder right out. So then I can just one by one get the solder to remove itself, and then I could take the connector out. So I'm gonna try and do anyway. Something else that this has too, which is really interesting, is it has a suction cup pen. So essentially that's what this is gonna be, where I can put different tips on there and they have like a little wide suction cup. Not that I'm gonna be doing it, but if I were gonna be trying to resolder, say, chips and stuff on there, it would allow me to be able to hold it in place where I want and place it, rather than trying to use tweezers. Holding it in the middle and being able to like place it down would be nice. Now I have practiced and learned how to replace memory chips. Still not good at it. They probably don't work because the board I tried on, practice on was dead. It's this guy over here. Like I said, this one you can tell I got way too hot, right? I mean, look, it's just totally discolored the chip. But I also replaced that one after learning. And that one you would never even know. It's perfectly aligned and everything. Whether or not it works, I have no idea. The board's dead. It was already dead. So this would help get it in place. The tweezers suck trying to get that on there, especially when you reball the joint. This would allow me to get it right where I want it. Every time I look at a soldering video, I feel like a technician's skill is measured directly by the girthiness of the rework gun's hose. Look how many, look at that. So in the cheap guns, the heater element and the blower and everything is inside the gun. And this is pretty weak. Like, it's not very strong. And I don't mean by its like ability to move air, because I do have volume control and all that, or not volume, but speed control and temperature control on it. It's just not very consistent. And it's pretty cheap quality because everything has to fit into here. And then this is just an electrical cable, as you can see. But if you look at a proper rework station gun, the electrical connections are all on the outside, but the air is blowing through this. This is a hose. So this is nothing more than a handle. And then the heating element and the fan is inside the base station. So it's just a better, beefier solution. And that's why the thickness, if you look at proper rework station videos, that's why their hoses are always so thick, because that's what the air is coming through. That's cool. I have temperature control built into the iron. So I can go temp up and temp down on the iron. So if I'm like, oh, I need a little bit more heat, instead of like, come off, go over, turn the push the buttons, I can just be like, okay, let me get a few more degrees while I'm at it. So that's pretty neat. The tweezers, there's no prongs in there right now, but this is gonna be awesome for trying to get SMDs and stuff that are double-sided off of the board, or even on the board. This allows me to heat both sides of it at once. So imagine there's two teeth coming out of there, right? So think of needle nose pliers or tweezers, but that's an actual iron. Damn, it just keeps going. Okay. So this is the base station. Oh my gosh, okay. That's heavier than I was expecting. So if we look at the back right here, you can see these are the outputs. They're gonna have like cable guide. That's obviously a cooling fan. Everything's mounted, everything's like mentioned on here where it goes. I think, I don't know. I'm gonna have to read the manual. I'm not sure where the, oh yeah, rework station goes right there. That one's pretty obvious. That's got the biggest diameter. Obviously a screen for a temperature control for each one of the devices. So this is obviously for cleaning the tip. This does the same thing, but I love how it has like this silicone thing on there, so it wipes any debris off with it. Like any solder that might still be on the iron will come off with that. That's essentially just that's the same thing as this, which is like a Brillo pad. Okay, I need to like get rid of all that shit and get this over there in some meaningful way, so we'll be back. Okay, so this is the practice board. I've got everything set up. I've been here for a bit trying to figure it out. Using the desolder gun. Don't know why I didn't get one of these a long time ago. Also too, the anti-glare lens. That's what I was used to seeing with all the flux and stuff, but man, the anti-glare light and the, what is that? polarized lens on there is so nice. So you can see I've already got some of the solder removed on some of these. Some of these I didn't get enough low temp in there, so I gotta do it again. But let's see if I can get it to like this top left one right here to let go. So the gun is up to temp. I've got the low temp solder in there. Hold it against the joint, kind of rock it around. You probably can't hear it because of the fan. I hear like a squealing sound, almost like a Leidenfrost effect sound. That tells me I'm melting the solder. And then hit the pump. You can actually hear it getting sucked up in there. Yeah, and it's desoldered. So this is so much better than a solder sucker pen, like the little plunger type, because I just push a button and a pump pulls constantly. Okay, it ain't exactly the prettiest, but I got it out. There's still some solder in there. I could honestly just wick that out. So in that standoff, these are just supports. They don't actually have a trace. They don't complete a trace to anything. Still a little bit up there in that sense pin. See if I kind of move it around. I mean, they're fairly open, but they're not perfectly cleaned out holes. Like the next step I need to do is clean out the holes. Okay, so as you can see, it looks like a war zone. It looks like a Battlefield 6 map on my board right here. I cannot get the solder out of those through holes, no matter how much I solder suck or use my sucker tool or my desoldering gun. I just cannot get that to come out. It even looks like it looks so burned right there, but that's just flux that's melted into there because I've had so much heat and flux on there for too long. But that was my second attempt. On the other board, I said I was gonna give it a shot at, and look at that. That, with the exception of maybe a tiny bit of solder still in that hole right there, that one, I got all the solder out of the through holes. Look at that, that is clean. So that's that side, and then the underside. Look at that, a lot of components down there. But I did this differently, and I didn't use my board heater. I just rewatched Northridge Fix's video again of him showing him removing it, and I just did it with the rework station heat, flux, low temp solder, and then obviously got it to where every pin could wiggle, and then I used my desoldering gun to just pull the solder right out of the holes, and this is what I was left with. A very clean, very ready to work, on board. Now here's the thing, is being able to do it without causing damage to the connector. That pin got all crooked right there because I was shoving my tweezers in there to try and yank it out. Now, don't ask me, but I got a glob of solder to even stick to the plastic, which I think is hilarious. But ideally, if we're replacing the connector, I was gonna see if I could take this out and then replace it. This is perfectly working board. I'm just gonna buy a new connector now. Because I have two 5090s that need to be repaired, I'm not going to use my perfectly good connector. But the theory is, if we're replacing the connector, it's probably bad anyway, right? I think just the amount of heat necessary, plus the fact that this is plastic, it just makes it very difficult to use the hot workstation. Mostly it's just because of the way the Asus boards are. The reason is because they're upside down, it's this notch. This notch allows the heat to hit the plug. Now the other boards are solid up here because they're reversed. So they don't have this notch for the pin, like the retention pin. So I just attribute it to this, honestly. The board doesn't protect a lot of that heat, or it doesn't protect the connector from the board, or heat hitting it from the hot air station. So that's unfortunate there. But here's the perfectly good brand new connector, which I'm gonna put on the 5090, but this should theoretically now just easily, oh yeah, look at that. That can actually, yep, boom. And then if I flip this over, look at that. Those are all ready to get soldered back on there. Very, okay, so I feel confident now to give this a shot on my XOC board. Not the air-cooled card, which I did some XOC stuff on and did some mods on that, but the last card actually started to melt the connector, and I'm not positive that there's actually not potentially maybe some damage somewhere else on the board. I mean, I couldn't do any troubleshooting. I do still firmly believe it's because that melted connector, that connector started to melt which broke contact with that one pin because plastic kind of got infused on it. And if we know with the Astro boards, because the individual plane sense monitoring, or the individual pin sense monitoring, if one of those pins is not seeing power, the board will not fire on. And in my case, it turned off in the middle of a run. So I'm gonna now give this the old college dropout try. Okay, you know, I look at it this way, as long as I don't cause any board damage, which as you can see on this one, there is no board damage on that. Very proud of that. I can always have someone bail me out if it comes to that. All right, so I fucking give up. Oh man, I'm just gonna have Northridge do it. I don't understand, like, maybe it's just there's more layers in this board. Maybe the ground plane's more beefy, I don't know. I mean, you can see right there, it started to damage the surface of the board. I was using clearly a lot of heat, but it didn't. See, I've got some pins that are loose, but that one's loose, right? The sense pins are technically loose. I cannot figure out why I was able to so easily on the other board get it out. I couldn't even get the little standoffs out here. So the word quit is not in my vocabulary. So anytime I have to quit something before I cause more damage, it absolutely triggers me. And this sucks because I just spent another like $1,200 on soldering stuff and I still can't replace a fucking connector. So just extremely frustrating. I mean, I've used the low temp solder. I used the solder desolder tool. I've used the different tips. I've used fucking everything. So I just give up. As much as I hate to do that, that's just where we're at. So I could not get the ground row, which is right here, to melt at all. And the board was hot. I even started using my heater and preheated the shit out of it with the rearwork station. So I do not know why I could not get, I have no idea why I couldn't get it to melt and mix with the low temp. I was able to do it just fine on the 12 volt row. Except for the top left one, that one right there, you can see I used a lot of heat to try and get that one loose, but I could not get that side to let go no matter what I did. It's like if I put more solder in there, it just would flow through the hole and then just start flowing down the pin rather than getting to the side that was still stuck. And I tried multiple times to heat it, pull it out. I just could not get it to mix. And then the ground row, as you can see, I could not get to mix at all, which would make sense as to why I couldn't get the post to mix, because I clearly never got the actual board where I needed it hot enough, but it was hot enough to where it was starting to scratch off the coating right there. I mean, that's superficial. It'll still work with that damage right there. You can see the copper layer under there. But the only thing I can think is this board is a lot heavier, so it just must have a really beefy ground plane. And rather than just throwing more heat at it and then knocking off some other surface mounted, any of these diodes and these resistors and such, I'm just gonna let an expert do it. I've watched his video a million times on how he takes it off, and I've tried the same technique. He doesn't say it's the temperatures and stuff. Maybe my flux is wrong, maybe he's the wrong kind of flux, I don't know. I mean, I've used this Quim Tech stuff, which by the way advertises as no clean. Bullshit. I mean, look up here in the corner. Like, this up here is so, it's like caked on. Look at that. It's so gross. And alcohol is just, and a brush is not touching it. It just, but that's my fault. It's been on there too long and it just starts to get like melted and then it just hardens. So I need to try and clean that off. But like I said, I'm gonna send these boards over. I have 2 boards, 2 connectors. I need to order another connector. I can replace the other one myself. I don't need him to do that. Once I get that connector in, I can do those solder joints. Removing this is incredibly frustrating. Like I'm actually quite angry right now. I know I'm not showing it, but I'm very, very, very frustrated. And I'm trying to do it right. I'm trying to use the right tools. I'm looking up techniques. I'm doing research. I've tried the wicking method. I've tried it all. And none of it fucking works. It's like, how can I have so much heat in the board, things start to like show damage, but the solder still won't let go? You can say, well, EJ, you don't have the heat in the right spot. Well, I have the board hot, and that's what has to happen. Alex says himself, solder will not melt, like the solder in the board will not melt until the board is the temperature at which solder melts. So the reason why you use low temp solder is to mix it with the leaded solder to reduce the melting temperature. And clearly I've gotten that to work on the other board. It's just, I think the ground plane on the 5090 Astral is just so beefy, I don't have the technique to overcome the wicking of the heat away from it, even though I had the board heater on and I had the board heated to 100 Celsius. So that's it. I give up. It's words I don't like to use. If you guys want to give some critiques, go ahead. I mean, I know people are gonna be like, don't send it off, keep practicing. I don't feel like practicing on a $3,500 or $3,300 board, and 2 of them. I have another one that I need to remove the connector from. So, oh well, that's it. Thanks for watching, guys. I will absolutely listen to all of your constructive techniques down below. The constructive ones. Any of the, you're stupid, you're doing it wrong, you can fuck off with those kinds of comments. And I have already talked about that in the beginning of this video. If there's one thing trades experts love to do is put everyone down so they make their own take look better, and we don't do that around here. All right, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna clean this board off more, try and get more of this crap off of here. And I guess the first thing I need to know is, what's y'all's go-to flux? I've even seen water-soluble flux. I know that's not what that is. So I'm at a loss. All right, see you guys in the next one.